Welcome to Night Shift Knowledge, a quiet place in the late hours where you can finally let go of the day. Take a moment to settle in, soften your shoulders, and allow the busy world to fade completely into the background. Tonight, we are going on a gentle journey through the fascinating corners of science, biology, and history. Before we begin, please know that the screen will fade to dark very soon. You can safely rest your eyes and leave this video playing as you drift off to sleep. I would also love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below with a general topic you would like me to cover in a future video. It is always a pleasure to read your ideas and shape this channel around what brings you peace. If you find comfort in this space, a like and a subscribe would be deeply appreciated. To ensure the next video quietly finds its way to you, please tap the notification bell. So as your breathing slows and your room grows a little darker, let your curiosity drift along with my voice. Let us begin. Imagine a universe where the stars themselves are getting sick, a cosmic plague spreading silently from sun to sun, and we only noticed when ours began to fade. This isn't a story from ancient myth. It's the opening premise of Andy Weir's novel, Project Hail Mary. A work of fiction, yes, but the science it asks us to consider is very real. It begins with a simple, terrifying observation. Our sun is dimming. Not by much at first, just a fraction of a percent. But the trend is clear and it's accelerating. Across the galaxy, astronomers see the same pattern in other stars. Something is stealing their light, their energy, their very life. And if it isn't stopped, Earth will freeze in the dark. In the story, the culprit is a fictional microbe. They call it astrophage. It's a single-celled organism just 10 micrometers across. To picture that, think of a particle of fine dust. Now, imagine that speck of dust doing something impossible. It eats sunlight. Not metaphorically, it consumes the raw electromagnetic radiation of a star. And it doesn't just eat it. It thrives in it. The surface of the sun is around 5,500 degrees Celsius, a temperature that vaporizes steel and turns rock to plasma. And this thing lives there. It sunbathes in the heart of a nuclear furnace. On its face, this violates everything we know. Biology can't exist at such temperatures. The second law of thermodynamics says you can't create a perfect engine. Any organism that absorbs that much energy would cook itself from the inside out. It's a cosmic murder mystery, and the prime suspect breaks the laws of physics. But what if it doesn't? What if we're just missing a piece of the puzzle? To find that piece, we have to look not at the stars, but at the extreme edges of life right here on Earth. Our planet is home to organisms that push the boundaries of what we thought was possible. They're called extremophiles. Life that exists in extremes. Consider the depths of the ocean near hydrothermal vents. There, in total darkness and under crushing pressure, superheated water rich with toxic chemicals spews from the Earth's crust. And life is everywhere. Bacteria like Methanopyrus candleri, meth, ANOPI, Rus candleri, reproduce happily at temperatures of 122 degrees Celsius. That's hotter than boiling water. It's not 5,000 degrees, but it proves life can be forged in a crucible. Then there's radiation. In the ruins of the Chernobyl nuclear reactor, a strange discovery was made. A black fungus growing up the walls. It wasn't just surviving the intense radiation, it was seemingly drawn to it. Scientists found species of Cryptococcus fungi that actually use melanin in their cell walls to convert gamma radiation into chemical energy. They don't eat sunlight, they eat radioactivity. It's a process called radiosynthesis. So the idea of a creature feeding directly on stellar radiation, it has a shadow here on Earth. And for surviving radiation, nothing beats Deinococcus radiodurans. Deinococcus radiodurans. This humble bacterium can withstand doses of gamma radiation thousands of times stronger than what would kill a human. It can even survive in the vacuum of space. Its DNA repair mechanisms are legendary. It's nicknamed Conan the Bacterium. So we have life that loves extreme heat. Life that eats deadly radiation. The building blocks for astrophage's incredible biology are real. They're scattered across our own world. But the puzzle remains. The thermodynamics. The heat. How does it not just melt? The novel proposes a brilliant speculative answer. One that ties into the most ghostly particles in the universe. Neutrinos. Neutrinos are everywhere. Trillions pass through your body every second. They barely interact with anything. They're a cosmic ghost story. But what if astrophage could catch them? What if its unique cell membrane could trap these phantoms? Here's the proposed cycle. Astrophage soaks up immense solar energy. It needs to get rid of the waste heat to keep its internal temperature stable. So it uses a quantum mechanical process to convert that excess heat into mass. Specifically, it stores that energy by creating neutrinos and holding them inside its cell. It's turning heat into tangible, trapped particles. Later, when it needs to move, it annihilates those stored neutrinos. That releases energy in a very specific directional form, a jet of infrared light. This is the Petrova line in the story, the signature of astrophage propulsion. Think of it like a battery. It charges by absorbing heat and converting it to stored neutrinos. It discharges by annihilating them for thrust. And in this cycle, the neutrinos become the ultimate cold sink, a place to dump the waste heat that would otherwise destroy the organism. It's a loophole in the thermodynamic law, using the universe's most elusive particle as its escape valve. This is the heart of the crisis, a life form that treats a star as its pasture, that uses the fabric of physics itself as its waste disposal system. It's fictional, but it's built on a scaffold of real, astounding biology. The sun is dying, and the suspect is a microbe that shouldn't exist. But to stop it, we couldn't do it alone. We would need help from a mind that evolved in a place so alien, so utterly dark and strange, that it saw the universe in a way we never could. That meeting, that first contact, is where our story truly begins. And that is for the next chapter. The human race had identified the enemy, a microscopic one eating our sun. But the scale of the problem was interstellar. To solve it, we would need to think on a cosmic scale, and as it turned out, we were not thinking alone. In the silence between the stars, a different kind of mission was already underway. Its pilot was not human, its ship was not made of aluminum or titanium, and its understanding of the universe was forged in a place we could barely imagine. Our story now turns to that pilot, to the alien engineer. His name, in our sounds, is Rocky. His home is a world called Erid. It orbits the star 40 Eridani A, about 16 light-years from Earth. But to call it an Earth-like world would be a profound mistake. Erid is a study in extremes. Imagine a planet with an atmosphere nearly 30 times thicker than our own. A crushing, heavy blanket of gas. The surface temperature is around 200 degrees Celsius, hot enough to instantly boil water, but not ammonia. Because Erid's air is not nitrogen and oxygen, it's pure, gaseous ammonia. And above this dense, hot shroud, there is only perpetual, absolute darkness. No star visible in the sky, no concept of day or night. This is the crucible that shaped Rocky's people. Evolution here followed a path utterly alien to our own. Light never mattered, so sight never developed. Instead, their world is one of sound and vibration. They use a sophisticated biological sonar. They perceive their reality through a constant stream of precise clicks and echoes. It's a tactile map of the world painted in sound, and their very bodies are built for this environment. An Iridian is not a single animal as we understand it. They are a colonial organism, a biological collective. Think of it like a coral reef, but mobile and intelligent. Less than 1 kilogram of Rocky's total mass is made of what we would call organic life. These are the worker cells. The rest, over 160 kilograms, is an inorganic chassis, a body built from the minerals of its world. Their skeleton is metal. Their outer shell is hematite, an iron ore. Their blood is liquid mercury, circulating through vessels of sodium silicate, a kind of glass. And their brain is not built of neurons. It's a complex crystalline structure that processes information using light, a brain of stone, thinking with trapped photons. This is a creature forged by high pressure and chemistry, where biology and geology blur. Now, picture this being inside its ship, the Blip A. It's a sphere designed for immense internal pressure to mimic home. Rocky doesn't sit in a chair. He has 5 limbs arranged symmetrically, and he latches onto surfaces. He works in total darkness because for him, darkness is clarity. His entire interface with the ship is tactile and sonic. He sees his instruments by hearing their shape and feeling their vibration. This is the key to understanding Iridian science. Their technology isn't an abstraction. It's a direct extension of their physical form. They engineer for strength, for pressure tolerance, for sonic precision. When they needed a material to build a starship, they didn't look for advanced alloys. They used the chemistry of their own world, a chemistry where pressure is the key. On Earth, xenon is a noble gas. It's famously inert. It doesn't react with other elements under normal conditions. But under the crushing pressure of Erid's atmosphere, the rules change. High pressure can force atoms together. It can make the impossible possible. Iridian chemists discovered how to polymerize xenon, to chain its atoms together into a solid, incredibly strong material. They call it xenonite. It's transparent to their sonar. It can be molded like plastic, but it's tougher than any steel. It's the foundation of their technology. A super material born from the unique conditions of their home. Rocky's mission was the mirror of ours. His son, 40 Eridani A, was also dying, fading from the same infection. He was an engineer sent to find a solution. And his journey reveals another astonishing fact about Iridian science. A massive blind spot. His ship was loaded with fuel, 31 million kilograms of the astrophage microbe. The math for his trip was perfect by Newtonian physics, the physics of motion and force that work perfectly here on Earth. But his calculations completely ignored Einstein's theory of relativity. The fact that as you approach the speed of light, time slows down and distances contract. For Rocky, this wasn't a mistake. It was a gap in knowledge. A hole in his civilization's understanding of the universe. Why? Because relativity is discovered by studying light. Its constant speed, the behavior of particles at high velocities. Erid's atmosphere is so thick, so dense with ammonia, that light from the stars above simply doesn't reach the surface. Cosmic radiation, the high-energy particles that hint at these relativistic effects, are also blocked. Their entire scientific history unfolded in a sealed chamber. they had no empirical reason to ever question the nature of light speed. It was an invisible truth, hidden by their own sky. So when Rocky engaged his spin drive, powered by the astrophage's incredible energy conversion, he expected a long voyage. But relativistic effects shortened it dramatically. He arrived at the destination system years earlier than planned. With a gigantic surplus of fuel, he discovered relativity by accident. In the depths of interstellar space. This is the profound theme of our encounter. A species' world doesn't just shape its body. It shapes its mind. It determines what questions get asked and what truths remain hidden. The Iridians mastered high-pressure chemistry and material science to a degree we can't fathom. But the fundamental nature of light and time was a mystery to them, just as the dense, hot chemistry of their world was a mystery to us. When Rocky's ship detected another vessel, the human Hail Mary, it was a meeting of two completely different evolutionary paths. Two different ways of perceiving reality. He didn't see a strange craft. He heard its shape. He felt its engine vibrations. And he recognized a fellow engineer on a desperate mission to save a home. Their first communication wasn't with words or pictures. It was with musical notes, a simple scale, played back and forth, a handshake written in sound. It was the beginning of a conversation that would have to bridge not just a language gap, but a perceptual chasm. How do you describe color to a species that has never seen light? How do you explain the twinkle of a star to someone whose sky is a solid black ceiling? Yet they found a common ground, not in their senses, but in their logic, in the universal language of mathematics, physics, and engineering. Rocky could hear the stress in a metal beam. He could feel the harmonic resonance of a faulty system. His understanding was tactile, immediate. Ours was theoretical, visual, but the underlying principles were the same. The alien engineer from a world of darkness had crossed the light years. And in doing so, he brought with him not just a new perspective, but the key materials and knowledge we lacked. His xenonite. His understanding of astrophage's life cycle from a different angle. His very existence proved a terrifying, wonderful thing. The cosmic plague wasn't just our problem, it was a galactic one. And if life on two such different worlds could be threatened by the same thing, perhaps they could also share a common origin. That revelation would come next. A connection buried in the very fabric of their cells and ours. A story written not in the stars, but in the ancient shared code of life itself. Now we have two engineers, one human, one Iridian, working together against a common enemy. But this raises a profound question. How is such a partnership even possible? How can a creature from a dark, high-pressure ammonia world with a body made of metal and rock even begin to understand the biology of a sun-eating microbe from a third unknown world? The answer is more astonishing than first contact itself. It's a story written in the very fabric of life. A story that begins not on Earth or Erid, but with a single shared seed. Imagine the sheer loneliness of our galaxy. Billions of stars, trillions of planets, the odds that life would arise independently, not once but twice, in neighboring star systems. They seem impossibly small. And yet, when Grace and Rocky compared notes, they found their biologies were not alien. They were family. The human cells in Grace's body and the organic worker cells inside Rocky's massive chassis, they spoke the same molecular language. Both used DNA as their genetic blueprint. Both used the same molecule, adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, as their universal energy currency. And both housed that energy production in the same microscopic power plants, mitochondria. This isn't a coincidence. It's a clue. A fingerprint left at the scene of a crime that's 4 billion years old. The unifying theory from the Hail Mary's logs is one of cosmic sowing, a concept we call panspermia, the idea that life or its building blocks can be spread from one world to another. Not by spaceships, but by natural processes. A meteor impact blasts material containing hardy microbes into space. That material drifts for eons, and if it lands on a suitable young world, it inoculates it. In this story, the source world is called Adrian, a planet orbiting the star Tau Ceti. Roughly 4 billion years ago, a cataclysm on Adrian ejected fragments of its crust into the void. Locked inside those rocks were the primordial ancestors of all life in this tale. Single-celled organisms equipped with DNA, ATP, and mitochondria. Some of those fragments fell onto a young, wet Earth. Others found their way to a hot, dark, high-pressure world orbiting 40 Eridani A. The seed took root in radically different soils. On Earth, it led to us. On Erid, it led to Rocky's organic components. And on Adrian itself, it led to something else entirely, the astrophage. This shared biochemistry was the master key. It meant Grace and Rocky weren't starting from zero. When Grace finally isolated a live astrophage sample, he could analyze it with tools designed for Earth life. And they worked. Because deep down, astrophage was built from the same parts. It was a eukaryotic cell. It had mitochondria. It was a cousin, albeit a wildly dangerous one, in a vast family tree that spanned light years. This common ground enabled the first, fragile conversations, not with words, but with chemistry. Grace could show Rocky the molecular structure of ammonia. Rocky could confirm the atomic makeup of xenon. They built a periodic table of understanding, element by element. Their shared reality wasn't philosophy or art. It was the consistent behavior of protons, neutrons, and electrons. It was the universal laws of physics and chemistry. In the silence of space, that was the only language they needed. And it was only because their lives shared a common origin that they could read from the same page. But this family tree had a natural balance. On Adrian, astrophage wasn't the apex of the food chain. Every predator has its predator. Adrian's was a creature called Taumoeba. Picture a microscopic, amoeba-like organism, simple. But where astrophage feasts on pure radiation, Taumoeba feasts on astrophage. It's Adrian's natural check on the Sun-Eater. For Grace and Rocky, it was a potential miracle, a biological solution. A predator they could unleash at the stars infected with astrophage. But there was a problem, a fatal flaw written in Taumoeba's own Adrian-evolved biology. Taumoeba had never encountered nitrogen. In Adrian's atmosphere, nitrogen was absent, so Taumoeba's cellular membrane was utterly defenseless against it. Nitrogen, a harmless gas that makes up most of the air we breathe, acted on Taumoeba like a corrosive acid. It seeped right through their cell walls and killed them. This was a devastating discovery. Their miracle predator would die instantly in Earth's atmosphere, or in the Hail Mary's human habitable sections. So they did what humans have done with crops and animals for millennia. They applied selective breeding. They exposed a population of Taumoeba to a tiny amount of nitrogen. The ones that survived, they bred. Then they increased the dose. Again and again, forcing the Taumoeba to evolve resistance at an accelerated pace. It worked. They created a nitrogen-resistant strain. But evolution is a tricky thing. Solving one problem can inadvertently solve another in a way you never intended. When you select for a tougher, more resistant cell membrane, you might be changing more than just its chemistry. You might be changing its physical structure, making it harder, more rigid. And, as Grace and Rocky would later discover to their horror, this new, hardened Talmaba had gained a terrible ability. It could now push its way through microscopic pores in Rocky's xenonite. The supermaterial that contained it was no longer a perfect barrier. The solution was threatening to become a new catastrophe. The story of Adrian's seed is a humbling one. It tells us that life, once it arises, may not be a solitary accident. It could be a contagion, a spark that leaps from one welcoming hearth to another across the immense cold distances. Our building blocks, the very essence of what makes us alive, might be cosmic travelers. And that means the life we someday meet out there might not be utterly alien. It might be a long-lost cousin, shaped by a different world that's singing, in its heart, a very familiar song. That shared song allowed for an alliance. It allowed a human and an Iridian to dissect a microbe from a third world, and it led them to a fourth, a potential savior with a deadly weakness. But the universe is a place of unintended consequences, and their next challenge wouldn't come from the stars or from an alien biology. It would come from a simple, universal truth, that what you don't experience, you can easily fail to imagine. Now we have a shared origin, a common seed. That explains the biology. It explains how two engineers from different worlds can look at the same microbe and see the same logic. But it doesn't explain everything. Because science isn't just about shared facts. It's about the questions you think to ask, and the questions you never imagine. Every world teaches its children to see in a certain way, and in doing so, it teaches them to be blind. Consider the Iridian ship, the Blippe. It arrived at the Tau Ceti system with a mission, to find the source of the astrophage and a solution. It was a triumph of engineering. But it arrived with a mystery, a massive, unexplained surplus of fuel. The ship's tanks were still nearly full. For the Iridian engineer, Rocky, this was a problem, a terrifying error in calculation. He had planned for a journey that would consume almost all of his fuel. He brought just enough to get home. But here he was, having used only a fraction. To him, it meant his navigation was wrong. His understanding of the universe was flawed. He was stranded. But the human scientist, Grace, saw something else. He saw a clue pointing to a fundamental truth about Erid itself. You see, Rocky's calculations were perfect. But they were perfect for a universe that doesn't exist. He used Newtonian physics, the physics of Sir Isaac Newton. Predictable, straightforward, where time and space are absolute. Where if you know an engine's thrust and the mass of your fuel, you can calculate your journey down to the last drop. That's the universe Rocky knew. Our universe, however, runs on Einstein's rules, on relativity. Where as you approach the speed of light, strange things happen. Time for you slows down. Distances contract. Your mass effectively increases. It takes more and more energy to go just a little bit faster. This is not a small correction. For a ship crossing light years, it changes everything. The relativistic effects meant the Blippe's journey used far less fuel than Newton would have predicted. That was the surplus. Rocky never accounted for it, because he had never discovered relativity. Think about that. A species capable of interstellar travel. A species that built a civilization and advanced technology. They never discovered one of the cornerstones of modern human physics. Why? The answer is in their sky, or rather, in what their sky hides. Erid is a world of perpetual, crushing darkness. Its atmosphere is thick, dense with ammonia. It blocks almost all light from the stars above. To an Iridian, the cosmos is a silent black vault. They evolved using sound. Their science was built on what they could hear and feel and measure in their high-pressure environment. The speed of light? It was an abstract concept, an invisible constant with no observable impact on their daily lives. They had no stars to measure, no way to see the bending of starlight around a gravity well, no cosmic radiation to study. Their world actively hid the evidence, so their physics developed along a different path. A brilliant, practical, but ultimately incomplete path. Their blind spot was woven into the fabric of their planet. They built a starship without ever knowing the full rules of the universe they were flying through. And this is not just a clever fiction. We have our own versions of this story, our own cosmic blind spots, shaped by the tools we have and the tools we lack. Consider a puzzle in modern physics: the neutron lifetime. A neutron, one of the particles in an atom's nucleus, is not stable on its own. Outside an atom, it decays. It turns into a proton, an electron, and a neutrino. Physicists have two ways to measure how long this takes. In one method, you trap ultra-cold neutrons in a magnetic bottle and count how many disappear over time. In another, you count the protons produced by decaying neutrons in a beam. Here's the mystery. These two methods give different answers. The bottle method says a neutron lives for about 879 seconds. The beam method says about 888 seconds. A difference of 9 seconds. That may not sound like much, but in particle physics, it's a glaring, unresolved discrepancy. It suggests something is missing from our picture. Are neutrons decaying into something we can't detect in one of the experiments? Is there a hidden particle? We don't know. The point is, our measurement of reality depends entirely on how we choose to look at it. The bottle sees one thing. The beam sees another. Our technology, our experimental design, creates the window through which we view the truth, and sometimes the window frame itself blocks the view. This reframes what science actually is. We often think of it as a ladder, a straight upward progression toward universal, objective truth. But what if it's not a ladder? What if it's more like a key shaped uniquely by the environment that forged it? Science is an environmental coordination technology. It's a set of tools and questions that a species develops to understand and navigate the specific world it finds itself in. For Iridians, that meant mastering high-pressure chemistry. It meant developing xenonite, a supermaterial made from xenon gas forced into polymers. On Earth, that's impossible. Xenon is inert. But under 29 atmospheres of pressure, the rules change. Iridian science found a key that fit their world's unique lock. Our science found different keys. We looked up at a clear, starry sky and asked about light. We discovered relativity. We looked into the cell and discovered DNA. These were the puzzles our environment presented to us. The haunting beauty of this thought experiment is this: neither perspective is complete. The human scientist, Grace, has relativity, but is stunned by xenonite. The Iridian engineer, Rocky, has xenonite, but is baffled by time dilation. Their blind spots are mirror images, one shaped by darkness, the other by light. Their collaboration works not because they have the same science, but because they have the same method, the same logic of observation, hypothesis, and test. When Grace explains relativity to Rocky, he doesn't reject it. He runs the numbers, he checks the fuel surplus against the new equations, and he accepts the evidence. The truth is the truth, no matter how strange it sounds. This is the hope in the story. Our planetary environment may determine the questions we start with. It may hide certain truths from us for eons. But the scientific method, that engine of curiosity, is a tool that can transcend its origins. It allows a creature who sees with sound to understand the behavior of light. It allows a creature who breathes air to design a solution for an ammonia-based organism. The universe doesn't care about our blind spots. The laws of physics operate with or without our understanding. The neutron decays in its bottle. The ship moving at light speed experiences time dilation. The truth is just waiting for a species to develop the right key, or to meet another species who holds a key shaped by a different world, and together they can start to unlock the doors that neither could open alone. Consider the Iridian ship, the Blip A. It arrived at the Tau Ceti system with a mission: to find the source of the astrophage, to save its world. But the ship itself was a puzzle, a vessel built to withstand the crushing pressure of an alien ocean, flying in the perfect vacuum of space. Its hull wasn't metal, it was something else, something smooth and impossibly strong. The humans called it xenonite. To build it, the Iridians had to do the impossible. They had to make an inert gas work for a living. Xenon. On Earth, it's a noble gas, the last of the loners. Sitting at the far right of the periodic table with a full set of electrons, it doesn't want to react, it doesn't want to bond. For a long time we called these elements inert for a reason. They don't play well with others, but inert isn't the same as never. Under normal conditions, xenon is aloof, but change the conditions and everything changes. Real-world chemistry shows us the way. In the 1960s, scientists managed to coax xenon into a compound called xenon hexafluoroplatinate. They bullied it into bonding. Since then, we've created others. Xenon dioxide, xenon trioxide. Even, in theory, compounds like iron xenide, where xenon atoms nestle between iron atoms under tremendous strain. The key is pressure, immense crushing pressure. Squeeze atoms hard enough and their electron shells distort. The rules of polite chemistry break down. The loner can be forced to join the party. That's the Iridian home advantage. Their entire world is a high-pressure chemistry lab, an atmosphere 29 times thicker than Earth's, a global ocean of ammonia adding even more weight. For them, the conditions needed to make xenon form polymers, a chain of linked xenon atoms, might be a Tuesday. Their technology isn't magic, it's an application of their native environment. They forged a super material from a reluctant gas, because their entire reality is built on pressure. Now, imagine that material forming the hull of a spaceship. A ship from a high-pressure world destined for the void. The engineering challenge is breathtaking. It's the opposite problem a submarine faces. A submarine holds the immense pressure of the ocean out. The Blippe had to hold 29 Earth atmospheres of pressure in. Its own thick, warm ammonia atmosphere contained within a shell, surrounded by nothing. We have codes for this. On Earth, the ASME, Boiler and Pressure Vessel Code, is the Bible for designing containers under stress. It tells engineers how thick a steel wall needs to be to hold a certain pressure. The principles are universal. Pressure, material strength, safety factors. If you apply that code to the Blippe's problem, a sphere containing 29 atmospheres, the numbers are staggering. The hull would need to be incredibly strong. Xenonite, with its exotic xenon polymer backbone, provided that strength. It was a material born of pressure, designed to defeat the vacuum. But a ship is more than a strong bottle. It needs to move. And for an interstellar journey, you need more than a gentle push. You need a torrent of energy, a way to convert fuel into thrust with ruthless efficiency. The Iridians and humans both found their engine in the same place, in the biology of the very microbe they were fighting, the astrophage. Remember the energy cycle. Astrophage soaks up radiation from a star. It gets hot. To stay at its precise happy temperature, it has to dump the excess heat. It does this by converting that heat energy into mass, storing it as neutrinos. Later, when it needs to move, it annihilates that mass, turning it back into pure energy. That energy is released as a beam of infrared light, the Petrova line, a single photon of thrust. Now, scale that up. Millions of astrophage, triggered simultaneously. You have a beam of infrared photons. In space, momentum is everything. If you throw something out the back of your ship, you go forward. It's Newton's third law. For every action, an equal and opposite reaction. Here, the something being thrown is light. Photons have momentum, a tiny, tiny amount. But if you have enough of them, and if your fuel converts mass to energy with perfect efficiency, the numbers start to work. This is the spin drive. It's not a chemical rocket with fiery exhaust. It's a silent, sun-bright beam of pure infrared. The human ship, the Hail Mary, added a brilliant twist. A mirror, a perfect mirror facing the astrophage fuel. When the astrophage fires its beam, the light hits the mirror and reflects straight back into the fuel, annihilating more mass. It creates a chain reaction. The effective exhaust velocity, the speed at which the propellant seems to be thrown backward, doubles. In the equations, it reaches twice the speed of light. 2c. This isn't breaking physics. Nothing is moving faster than light. It's a clever trick of momentum accounting. Because the light bounces, each photon contributes its momentum twice. The drive gets more push from the same fuel. It cuts the required fuel mass from an impossible mountain to a merely colossal hill. This was humanity's leap. Understanding relativity and light well enough to game the system. The Iridians, blind to the nature of light in their dark sky, built their drive on Newtonian principles alone. They calculated the fuel needed for their journey, a staggering 31 million kilograms of astrophage. They packed it all, and then they arrived early, with fuel to spare. Because relativity, which they'd never discovered, was working in their favor. Time dilated, space contracted. Their journey was shorter than their math predicted. Their surplus fuel would become the key to the entire mission, a gift from a physics they didn't know. So here we have the twin pillars of the impossible journey. Xenonite, the supermaterial forged in the heart of a high-pressure world, and the spin drive, the engine that turns a parasite's life cycle into a star-spanning torch. One came from the Iridians' deep understanding of pressure and chemistry, their native science. The other came from a shared enemy and a human insight into light. One material, one engine. Both rooted in the relentless, universal application of physical law. They built a bridge between stars. But a bridge needs a destination. And for that, they had to turn their greatest weakness into a weapon. Two species from two impossible worlds found a common enemy, astrophage. They also found a common goal, to breed a predator that could destroy it, the Taumoeba. But in their desperate race to save their sons, Grace and Rocky created a new problem, a terrible unintended consequence. The Taumoeba, native to Adrian's atmosphere, couldn't survive nitrogen. Earth's air would kill it. To save Earth, Grace needed a resistant strain, so he and Rocky bred one. Through painstaking selection, they created a Taumoeba that could thrive in a nitrogen-rich environment. It was a triumph of collaborative genetic engineering. But life finds a way, and it found a terrifying new one. The nitrogen-resistant Talmeba they created evolved another trait, one they never intended. It learned to squeeze, to permeate the microscopic pores in rocky xenonite. This was the very material that kept their ships and habitats intact, the supermaterial that made their mission possible. Imagine the horror. The perfect biological weapon now able to seep through walls. If it got loose on Rocky's ship, the Blip A, it would eat through every seal and every tank. It would flood his high-pressure, ammonia-filled world with an alien atmosphere. It would be a catastrophe. Their solution for Earth had become an existential threat to Erid. They were stuck in a biological catch-22. The Talmeba that could save Earth would doom Erid. The mission was over. They had failed both their worlds. In that moment of despair, stranded between stars, the true test of their partnership began. Not just sharing science, but sharing a desperate shared logic. And from that shared logic came a spark, a wild, two-part idea born from two completely different ways of seeing the universe. The human part was relativity. The Iridian part was materials science. Alone, each was useless. Together, they were magic. Grace's mind went to Einstein, to time dilation. The faster you travel, the slower time passes for you relative to everything else. For Rocky's ship carrying the dangerous Talmeba, time was the enemy. The creature would reproduce and spread, threatening his ship. But what if you could slow its time to a crawl? If Rocky could travel back to Erid fast enough near the speed of light, then from the Talmeba's perspective, the journey would take almost no time at all. It wouldn't have time to reproduce or escape. It would be frozen in a bubble of slowed time. But to do that, Rocky needed fuel, a lot of fuel. And here was the beautiful, ironic twist. Rocky had fuel, a massive surplus. Remember, his people had never discovered relativity. They calculated their journey using simple Newtonian physics. They expected a long, slow trip, so they packed enough astrophage fuel for a long, slow trip. 31 million kilograms of it. But relativity had other plans. Their spin drive, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, caused length contraction. The distance to Tau Ceti shrank from their perspective. They arrived years earlier than planned with almost all their fuel still in the tanks. Fuel they now didn't need for the return trip, fuel that was just sitting there. So, part 1 was solved. Rocky could go home very, very fast. But part 2 remained. The Talmeba was still on his ship. It could still permeate xenonite. They needed a prison. It couldn't escape, even for a short, time-dilated journey. And this was where Rocky's genius answered Grace's. Human science gave them the clock. Iridian science would build the cage. They needed a new material, one with pores even smaller than xenonite, too small for a microscopic Talmeba to squeeze through. Rocky proposed something extraordinary, a 3-layer laminate, a sandwich. The outer and inner layers would be standard xenonite, strong and durable. But the middle layer would be something new, crystal xenonite. He called it Xenonite C. Under normal conditions, xenonite is an amorphous polymer. Its molecules are in a jumbled, tangled network. That network has tiny gaps, pores. But if you manipulate the chemical structure, you can force it to crystallize. It forms a rigid repeating atomic pattern, a lattice with no gaps big enough for a Talmeba. Building it required insane precision and a touch of human biology. Grace suggested using Talmeba itself as a quality control tool. They would build a test chamber out of the new crystal xenonite. Then they'd fill it with nitrogen and pump in Talmeba. If the pressure dropped, The Talmuba was eating the nitrogen, which meant it was inside, which meant the material had failed. They'd test sample after sample until one held, until the pressure stayed rock steady. That sample would become the middle layer of Rocky's fuel tanks, a perfect, impermeable barrier. They worked for days, or what felt like days, in the chaotic routine of two different species, the human and the alien spider-like engineer. They communicated through musical notes and labored translations. Question: "You are happy?" Rocky would ask. "Yes, Rocky." "I am happy." "This is good work," Grace replied. Finally, they had it, a perfect sheet of xenonite sea. They tested it. The pressure gauge didn't budge. The Talmuba was locked out. They had built a cage within a ship, within a bubble of slowed time. Rocky could go home. He could take the nitrogen-resistant Talmuba to Erid's sun and save it without dooming his own ship or his world. The two solutions were no longer in conflict. They were integrated, saved by a hybrid of human physics and Iridian chemistry. The moment of departure was quiet. There were no grand speeches. They couldn't make them, just a simple, profound exchange. Rocky, in his complex melodic language, said what Grace's computer translated as, "You are my best friend. You are my only friend." And Grace, fumbling for the right notes, replied, "Same to me." And then came the physical gesture, the one that defied all their biological differences. Rocky extended his stone-like five-fingered claw. Grace bumped it with his human fist. "Fist my bump," Grace said. A perfect, flawed, beautiful phrase. Cooperation across the evolutionary divide. This is the heart of the story. Not the astrophage, not the spin drive, but the bump of the fist on a carapace. It's a celebration of scientific epistemology, the process of how we know what we know. Grace and Rocky had nothing in common, not biology, not environment, not senses. Their blind spots were total opposites. Rocky's people never saw the stars, so they never wondered about light speed. Grace's people lived in light, so relativity was inevitable. But they shared a method. Question, test, observe, revise. They shared a logic, a belief that the universe operates by consistent, discoverable rules. And they shared a language, not English or Iridian, but mathematics, chemistry, physics, the shared grammar of reality itself. Their friendship wasn't built on liking the same foods or enjoying the same music. It was built on mutual respect for a well-designed experiment, on the shared thrill of a solved equation, on the trust that comes from watching someone else's logic arrive at the same answer as your own. Project Hail Mary, at its core, is an optimistic thought experiment. It asks, what if the first thing we share with an alien intelligence isn't a love of peace or art, but a love of the right answer? What if cooperation isn't about feeling the same, but about thinking the same way? In our world, we see this bridge being built every day between disciplines and between cultures. The language of science is already our most powerful tool for crossing divides, for solving problems too big for any one nation or any one species. The story ends with both sons saved, with a friendship forged in the cold dark between stars. It reminds us that our planetary environment, our atmosphere, our gravity, our sun, shapes what we see, and more importantly, what we don't see. But it also suggests that the desire to look, to question, to test, might just be universal. And if it is, then out there in the silence we might not be alone. And our first hello might not be a message of peace, but a shared equation, a collaborative experiment, a fist waiting for a bump. Thank you for listening. We have reached the end of tonight's topics, and it is time to let your mind completely unwind. Whatever you learned tonight, let it fade into a soft hum as you drift off. Thank you for being a part of Night Shift Knowledge and sharing this quiet space with me. Remember to leave a topic suggestion for next time if you are still awake, but for now, just rest. Sleep well, and I will be here the next time you need to quiet your mind. Good night.